I think you're on mute, Bruno.
Thank you, Rob. Hello, everyone. That happens at the beginning of the year when we
Hi,
restart.
everybody.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Rob. How are you
I'm
today?
fine, thank you. And how are you, Bruno?
I'm great. I'm great.
Yeah, and welcome, everybody.
Looking forward to this sharing of what we've seen in the last couple of weeks happening because there is no day without something happening, right?
That's true. Every day, something new in the food industry.
Yeah.
That's
Or,
for sure.
or good or less good.
Yeah.
So we have Fatima with us. Hello, Fatima. Welcome here. And well, I say let's start, right?
Yes. Let's
Mm,
have a good idea.
what we have prepared for you.
Yeah. Perhaps we'll start with the introductions.
Yeah,
Shall I introduce you first, Bruno?
please.
Yes. All right. Yeah, for those of you who don't know Bruno, Bruno is actually a veterinarian by training, but he really very early on in his career developed a passion for quality and food safety, and he has spent over 29 years now in the food industry, both at local and global functions, and he has worked across more than 25 countries, mainly in quality and product development. He has held director level functions in those. And also, Bruno has been the technical director of IFS before founding his own company, Integralim Consulting. And and from within his company, he's really on a mission to help everybody from small to large corporations and even international organizations to improve food integrity for the sake of consumers. And I think that's a really good thing to do because still too many consumers suffer, as we will see today again, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, Rob. So for those who don't know Rob, Rob is a co-founder of Food Safety Expert. It's a business which focuses on not only on training but also on coaching, mentoring food safety professionals all around the world, and of course also consulting. We have over 22 years of experience in international food industry, and with holding various QA position in different multinationals such as Unilever and DSM, and also in privately held smaller companies. And indeed, I always like when this part where you're the boutique consulting agency, so exclusive boutique agency for the international food industry. And for those who are following other webinars, ask us anything, right,
Yes.
Rob?
Yep.
But Rob is also speaker and he's also writer, and there are a lot of very interesting publication and articles written by Rob and also Kitty.
Yep. My partner.
Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
So what do we have as a menu today?
Yeah, it's almost our fixed menu, but at least the topics are relatively fixed. So we'll first start with some news updates, some news that caught our eyes. Then we'll discuss the recalls, some of the recalls that were interesting in the last month and a half. Legislation updates from the EU and the US, and then updates from GFSI. A lot has happened there in recent weeks. And the latest addition on the block are the conference updates. So whenever we join a conference, we'll share a few things about that conference. And of course, last but not least,
The
we
free
have,
resource of the month.
yes,
So you have to stay until the end to get the free resource of the month.
and it's going to be an interesting one again.
Yeah. So you chose this news, Rob, about this flaming hot nacho for a famous brand, right? The Doritos, and the impact
Yep.
it had, right? How an ingredient can have a serious impact, not only not on, here not on food safety but on safety, right?
On safety, on personal safety, because as you can see from this article, the flaming hot Doritos, the seasoning actually caused factory workers in Australia to experience difficulty in breathing and have skin irritations when they had to basically produce this product. Of course, the factory tried to solve it by installing extra fans so that the people don't get the stuff in their face. It is strongly irritating stuff that's on there, and this is not the only time that they were in the news. I think in recent months we had in several countries, even young children.
Mm-hmm.
Similar things, even beyond, beyond skin irritation, up to being hospitalized, and even one child going into an anaphylactic shock situation. So yeah, it really shows that this stuff, you might say, is a little bit on the border. It's nice to create videos that you're eating this and doing strange things, but yeah.
Is it worth it? So I'm wondering, is it worth it to have a?
Yeah, if you get 1 million views and you get paid by YouTube, it might be worth it. But personally, I don't think so.
Do the video for sure. No, but I mean for the company. I mean,
yeah.
I'm always wondering, right? How you can keep such an ingredient in your recipe?
Yeah.
Just for the fuzz or just for marketing, if you know that you have this impact. I had several years or decades ago a similar experience in France where we had a cheese appetizer, apéricubes, where we had different flavors, and one of them was pepper. It was a new pepper flavor, and instead of a liquid form, it was in a powder form, and we had a lot of issues, so we changed immediately back to the previous one. But yeah, it's makes you think, right, about how these decisions are made.
I fully agree, and children sometimes are even more susceptible to this. Also, digging back in my distant past, that was at Unilever. At a certain point in time, they had an ice cream, a water-based ice cream called the sour finger. It looked like a hand, like this, like the hand, and then the finger was going up. And it contained a lot of acid to make it really sour. But by accident, the factory did a double dose of acid. And then it was so sour, it literally caused burning marks inside your mouth. And actually, at the time, the quality director of the region made all the quality managers eat one, just to get the message home that we should really pay attention. It was not my factory, but still remember that to the day, and that's where I think any food, it should be safe, because that's what consumers expect, that anything you put in your mouth is safe. And of course, if you purchase a paste of Indian curry, and you don't eat that raw, you know that you need to process it. But putting that stuff on ready to eat foods, I think is at least a bit dangerous. And that's what this message is showing.
That's true. And how a company reacts or does not react to incidents, because at some point you need to stop it, right? It's really, things to food for thought, as we say.
Yeah, indeed.
So we have indeed some recalls and outbreaks news as every month.
Yep. The first one I put in there is on the top left. That's G Fuel. It's one of the power drink brands from the US. And actually, it was taken from the market in Europe, in this case by the Slovenian authorities, because it contains L-theanine, which is actually a substance which is in tea leaves. But if you distill it and add it to a power drink, it all of a sudden becomes a substance which in Europe requires novel food law approval. Because L-theanine was not present as a general ingredient in the market in Europe before 1997. That's kind of the drop dead date for this novel food application. And we see that, on a regular basis, that food ingredients that are, you might say, okay in US and Canada. We have seen this with cannabidiol, CBD, that kind of substances already for a year or two. But this one, actually triggered me as well. Especially if you're importing finished products or even food ingredients, although they might be approved in other markets, you still always have to think about this novel food legislation in the EU.
And make sure that the product that you're importing respect the legislation of the country where you are exporting them, right? That's a good one. Well, I wanted to make an update. On we have already talked about these topics about the cantaloupe outbreak, which was huge end of the year and which has just been declared as over. And there was, if you so it was salmonella in melon, in watermelon, not watermelon. Sorry, it's sweet melon, right?
Yeah.
And it was in the US and Canada, and you had almost 700 cases of people suffering from it, with more than 226 people in hospital and 15 deaths. So I think it's nine in Canada and 6 in the US. So so a product that it was cut, right? It was not the whole cantaloupe. It was very, very often it was cut, and of course when you cut a fruit, it's you have all the contamination, the potential contamination from outside coming inside the product, and
or sometimes even the knife. If you don't clean the knife properly or don't handle it properly, you might be actually recontaminating every time you make a cut.
Yeah, from one melon to another, and so on. So it was a huge thing. And another one which also affect children was this apple sauce lead contamination related to cinnamon coming from how do you say? Is it an importer in Ecuador? Because I don't think that I'm not sure that the cinnamon. There is a lot of cinnamon in Ecuador, but it was contaminated with lead. So more than 355 children were sick of lead poisoning. And what's particular there is the last information I have is that it was suspected that it was food fraud. That lead was used as to
colorate?
Not to colorate, but give more weight to the cinnamon.
Okay.
Also,
lead is heavy.
It's heavy metal.
Literally.
And of course, it's terrible. It shows also that food fraud, even it's not always causing diseases, but may lead in such a huge. Both are really very scary when you look at it, and also we discussed it last time about the chemical contamination, where actually the food industry is doing, can we say, not a lot?
Or not sufficient always.
Not sufficient, and relying a lot on the suppliers and on certificates. It's not the case for all the companies, but I think this is something where in the HACCP, chemical contamination, it's specification, some analysis, but it's not a hazard that you control really proactively.
No, and certainly if you're purchasing single ingredients, like in this case, potentially cinnamon powder, I think it does make sense from time to time to actually take a sample and do a full run on pesticides, heavy metals, and other potential contaminants that you could expect there. Sometimes these products are also prone to mycotoxins. You actually want to analyze and not just rely only on a certificate of analysis, or even worse, on a certificate of compliance, because that's still happening as well, that sometimes suppliers just provide a certificate of compliance, but basically is saying, we do test and we think that this batch, although we didn't test it, is still within this range.
Yeah, this is nonsense.
That's the worst, I think, that you can do. Yeah.
The certificate of compliance. Okay, so the next.
It looks like French fries, but actually it is cheese. It's grated cheese. In this case, it's the Beery Cheese Company of Louisville in Ohio. And they are recalling their cheese, their shredded cheese, because there's foreign material in the product, especially glove remnants. So most likely you might see some blue pieces in between it. They're not in the picture, but and that, I think, again brings home, we wear gloves, but they can indeed become a foreign object. So I think in general, glove policies in factories, my first question always is, do you really need gloves? Why are you using gloves? Especially with cheese. Is it so... In fact, can we recontaminate cheese? Well, most likely not. Even most of the cheese first is coated, and then even if you shred it, it can still handle quite a bit of micro load in that sense. So most likely in a factory like this, people are wearing gloves to protect their own hands from getting dirty. And then you should ask yourself, is that the best way to do it? Do I really need those gloves? Yes or no? I think if you do need gloves, really be careful with those, that you say, either you wear the gloves or they are immediately disposed of and not left somewhere on the production line or whatever. And there's many.
Makes me think of about two things. The first one is it's interesting when you, but this sort of summary that we do about recalls, but everyone can do it, right? Take an example and say, how does it apply in my factory? How am I using gloves? Am I sure about the why and how we control it? And secondly, indeed, I agree with you with the gloves. It's always a nightmare to see how, because it's a sort of false protection, and people think that because they have gloves, it's all very hygienic and protecting themselves and the product. But at the end, when you look at all what you can do with gloves in the production line, it's not safe at all. I mean, it's much better. I've always said it's much better to have clean, washed, and disinfected hands regularly than to wear any gloves, unless it is to protect the hands. But then it's not sort of rubber gloves, but more
more chemical gloves.
Or when you use knives or some things that really protect you. It's a good.
No, because I've come across factories where indeed the cleaning crew was wearing also the blue gloves, because otherwise they would they need to handle some lighter chemicals and so on, which are or heavier, that are not so nice for their hands, which is okay. But this factory actually implemented a structure where they said, we will count the gloves beforehand, we will give them to you, and when we at the end of the cleaning, we're going to count the gloves again. Everybody has to put them on the table, so that we know that the amount of gloves went in also came out again.
And that you don't forget them.
Because that can also happen, that they're somewhere in a piece of equipment that was just cleaned, then you think it's okay, and it only takes a small moment of not thinking, of not being aware, and there you go.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and then the last case I wanted to talk to you about is about Orla Baxendale, this young lady, because she died, 25-year-old dancer from UK in a dancing school in the US, and she went to a retailer which is called Stu Leonard's to buy some cookies. She asked if there were any peanuts, because she was obviously allergic to peanut. They say no, and she died. Although she had EpiPen and so on, it was nothing to do. It was very strong reaction, and of course this is terrible. But what is even more terrible is the fight that is starting between the two companies. The retailer was the retailer is a sort of family retailer, but quite big. Was done a video declaration saying that they are sorry, but they always do the things right, and it's because of their supplier who didn't inform them of the change of ingredients. And when you look at the video, it's really interesting to look at this video because it says for me a lot about the culture of the company. They are not that empathetic. He says, "I'm sorry," but it's really okay. You notice that he's concerned, but you wonder, is it really about the person or about his company? And the fact that to put the blame on someone else, I think it's terrible. It's always terrible. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just a couple of days or after you put the blame on your supplier, and the supplier answered not on video but on statement saying, "Well, I have informed the company in July last year, so that this happened in Jan 2024." And the supplier said, not only said, but he shared the emails that he had sent and all the information that he had sent to Stu Leonard, giving even the email, they are blurred, but email addresses of the person he sent this to. And of course, the question is, basically, can you die today because of a mistake in labeling? Yes.
Yeah.
And shouldn't you do more than just informing your customer that you have changed the recipe when this can have such an impact? I mean, for me, both companies somehow are reacting wrongly. I understand that there are some, of course, legal issues that will come very soon, but it's not the proper way. You don't just send a mail and then you wash your hands
Yeah.
of the problem. So it's
No, certainly not for a change like this. If you
yeah,
were all of a sudden including peanut allergen, you really want to make sure that your customer has really understood that this is a big change, and you might even want to have a positive confirmation back.
exactly.
Uh,
Have you
uh,
changed? Yeah,
yeah. You do the
but
same thing if there's something wrong with your product. Let's say you have a microbiological contamination with the
yeah,
pathogen. You do exactly the same thing. You inform your customer, phone them, and say, "Can you please confirm that you have blocked this product or taken your product out of the market?" Because you want to make sure that the general public is safe.
no, it's and that's true. That's true. That for me, there are two examples in one of not good food safety culture,
Yeah,
and that unfortunately finished with the death of one person. Finds one death always too much.
yeah,
Really, no, it's really terrible. But it's worth also learning from these experiences, and somehow I think we also need to do more in terms of labeling. Can be that just a mistake in labeling kills
yeah.
someone. I think it's
Yeah, especially with allergens. If you look at allergen-related recalls, 50% of those are actually related to the data and labeling.
yeah, mis-
So a mistake is easily made. So I think, please, if you can use automated systems that actually do
even
automated checks. Make sure you check things really with 4 eyes, not only on the data, because another thing that is also quite common in relation to allergens is applying the wrong label.
yeah, of course.
You think you're producing product A, but you actually put the label on for product B, which has a less allergens, and then you still have a mix-up.
Yeah, and that can
Um,
happen in your factory, but it can happen also at your label supplier if he's
yeah,
producing the labels and he's doing them in
yeah,
parallel.
yeah,
It can be also something that
yeah,
happens. So in terms of risk, is something really to consider. I also, you probably know that, but it's true that you notice through this information shared by the company that in the US it is not compulsory to put, like in Europe, the allergen in in
In bold.
bold.
Yeah.
In bold is just it's true that it's
Yeah.
mixed with the other ingredients,
Yeah.
and you have also, but you have the line where it contains
Contains. Yeah.
these allergens.
Yeah.
But no, it's also really something terrible. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
in such I don't want to say stupid. Yeah, it's really something that we must fix when you are in the food working in the food industry.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, especially with peanuts, but there's many others. Also, other nuts can still hurt quite a significant amount of people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, then a round of legislation, Rob.
Okay, that's good. Let's go to the EU first. Yeah, again, the avian flu is still roving around. So again, we see restrictions on concerning poultry from France, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia. So yeah, it's
Ongoing
again
story.
back. So of course it's also the human flu season, and yeah, the same thing holds true for the avian flu. So a lot of countries are again really vigilant again. Luckily, it doesn't disrupt supply chains too much. But yeah, when it is occurring in and on farms, entire regions, of course, get closed down. And there are regions, and certainly in the Netherlands where I live, where we have a lot of chicken farmers in a very condensed area. So if things happen there, usually there is a bit more of an impact. But okay, just something to be aware of. Luckily, in the food chain itself, it doesn't do too much. Usually these hens can still get slaughtered and eaten by us without too much of a problem. But okay, it's just to let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other one is EFSA. They have recently updated an assessment of inorganic arsenic. And of course, arsenic, as you might know, is pretty toxic.
Yeah.
You only need a few milligrams of it even to kill yourself. Luckily, it is not present in milligrams in our food. But yeah, it is actually widely occurring contaminant, which is naturally
present in some fruits.
present in nature, and then also through the roots and absorbing it ends up in foodstuff. So yeah, the report also says clearly that the main foods that are involved are rice or rice-based products. They can accumulate arsenic, but also grain, so wheat and wheat-based products. And one that I didn't expect, but that is drinking water. And of course, drinking water very often is filtered through the soil, and we pump it up from a deeper location. Although they see that the risk for drinking water is a bit low in Europe, but still, it is a risk. So rice and grain and water. So yeah, if you're doing some testing on those raw materials, make sure that from time to time to look at your heavy metals. Usually that includes arsenic. To be aware where you are, where your suppliers are with this inorganic arsenic, because in the end, long-term exposure and it, obviously, if in a diet, if you eat enough rice or grain products, it can still become a problem. For humans, because it is really associated strongly with certain forms of cancer. Especially skin cancer, actually. You would expect it would be more in your internals, but actually skin cancer, they see that can actually be caused by arsenic. So that's something at least to be aware of. And if EFSA is writing or updating these papers, usually you see there that there's more interest in the food industry. Some companies will all of a sudden start testing more for arsenic. So I do expect a few recalls in the coming months around arsenic. I'll keep an eye open.
That's also why it's interesting to keep the eye open and to do this sort of monitoring of what's happening, right? So to be aware of what's coming to us.
Yeah. Because it's not only companies, it's also food safety authorities who obviously also read those reports and they say, oh yeah, let's include it in our annual scheme for this year because EFSA wrote something. Usually those are triggers that quite often do start a small wave of extra tests and then sometimes also extra fines that end up being recalls.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And do you want to talk also about seafood in the US?
Yeah, in the US, there's also some new guidance, some new draft guidance for what they call the sampling of seafood, which is subject to detention without physical examination. Because basically in the US, if you import seafoods and you have a certain status, you still need to have a sample, keep it there for just in case the fishery authorities do come and visit your plant, so that they can actually take the sample and analyze it themselves. But you really need to. They gave some new guidance on how food processors should do this. So be aware. Those are changes. Of course, it's draft guidance, but the FDA still likes it if you follow it. And of course, they do this for certain reasons, because they had some instances with adulteration with pathogens, also unlawful animal drugs that are being used in fish. So certainly if it's cultivated fish, even if it's sea-based, there's still a tendency by the farmers in that sense to sometimes put some drugs in there to keep the fish healthy. And of course, histamine in some fish is always a risk. So that's what they're on the lookout for. And this draft guidance will help. Hopefully do the right things, take the right amount of samples and take samples in the right way. Not only for the FDA, but especially also for yourself. Because if you now know what is a good way of taking samples and then doing an analysis on your products, it actually also helps the fish industry itself to be more safe. Because it's easy to take one fish, but usually you want to take a little bit more and look at which parts of the fish you start analyzing and so
on. The sample,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And there's one more actually. What is it? There's also an update, a further update from the FDA on the draft guidance for industry on the hazard analysis and risk-based preventive controls for human food. So HACCP. The HACCP version of us, and which in the US they call HARP-C. Actually. What they've done, they've added additional information around current food hazards in the food industry and the current interest also of the FDA in those. So certainly if you're in the US or exporting to the US, take note of this because there will be more detailed information in it for you. And you can rest assured the FDA will be checking on those things. Certainly, if you're an exporter, make sure to take heed of this because that's a big difference between Europe and the US. If you're exporting to the US, the FDA expects you to abide all the US food legislation. In Europe, that's not the case. You can export to Europe as long as you stick to the import checks that they do on things like pesticides, heavy metals, mycotoxins, and microbiological stuff. But for the rest, you can almost do what you want. That's a big difference between those two continents in terms of import and export rules.
Fatima is asking us where exactly the presence of arsenic in rice and water exists in Europe.
There's always a background in arsenic, and that's one of the things with growing things on soil. Soil isn't just standard soil. There's always some other parts in soil. Sometimes there's more cadmium or more lead in specific soil. So that's why initially they thought it, with what we mentioned before, the cinnamon, that it could have come, because it grows as a root, that it could have come through the soil. And I've seen literally cadmium levels in potatoes that are very high. And then if you do then a soil sampling, you find elevated levels of cadmium. So you always have to be aware that these heavy metals are present in nature, and therefore also on farmlands, in the wetlands where we cultivate the rice and so on. So it really depends. It's farm by farm. There will be differences, but of course we grow these crops in such huge quantities, that a small background of arsenic will always be present, and the same thing goes for most of the other heavy metals.
Okay, thank you for. I hope it's Fatima. It's a good answer for you. I wanted to share a bit of, as we do when there are some news about GFSI related standards, and there are three kind of news. Well, the one is that the BRCGS has issued the new version of its gluten-free standards. It was a standard that they bought. It was an American American standard, so to speak, that from an American company, and it was included in the BRCGS catalog, and now it has really become a BRCGS standard. Also, they changed it's also a product and process certification scheme. Before it was a management system scheme, and so that's one of the last issues, the last standard. I think the BRCGS packaging, we will talk about it when it comes. The new version comes out during the year. So that's the first news. The second one, which is interesting for some countries, not for all, is that FSC 2000 has published all its guidelines that we talked about in the previous webinar, but they issued them in 5 more languages than English. So you have Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, Spanish, and Turkish. No French, no Dutch, and no German, by the way. But of course, these are very. It's related to the markets where FSSC has most, let's say, customers or companies there. So, but it's interesting, I think, for those who have not yet looked at these guidelines, they are quite interesting. I have put the one about food loss because it's something new for FSSC 2000, and of course, if it's in your language, but it's then easier to read.
Yeah, to read. Yeah, and you can download those for free. So that's also good. Yeah, with BRC, you always have to pay for it.
Exactly. That's the difference between BRC on one side and the others, FSC 2000 and IFS, that always publish free guidelines.
Yeah.
And speaking about IFS, they have issued in the last weeks guideline for IFS food audit checklist. It's sort of a guideline for the auditor, but actually it's very useful because first they cross-reference all the legislation, the main legislation, not all, but related to Europe and the US, to the different chapters and the different requirements. When there is specific legislation related to a requirement, they will put it there. They also show examples of good practices of non-compliance and what can be a critical non-conformity. So I think it's very interesting, and not only for companies who are certified according to AFS, because at the end the topics are the same for everyone, more or less,
Yeah.
right? So it's really something that I recommend to everyone, because it's really very useful, very interesting to understand the implication of the legislation, and also to give this view. And it's almost can also be seen as a preparation for the audit,
Yeah.
a bit coaching tool to say, okay, what is expected exactly, and how will the auditor check me,
Yeah.
even if, as I always say, for guidelines, they are not mandatory. So it's not mandatory for the companies to have these guidelines, and it's not mandatory, of course, for the auditor to ask you the questions that are in the guideline.
Yeah.
But
But it
I
might
think,
actually also be interesting as an internal auditor training.
yeah, it's indeed,
If
you're
I
right.
say pre-read this and we'll do a general
Yeah,
session of 1 hour, and instead of doing that by PowerPoint to everybody,
yeah,
uh,
you're
that
right
time
in
we,
terms of internal audit training, internal audit preparation,
yeah,
because you can also prepare, because it's a requirement by requirement when you are auditing, I don't know, the storage, but you can look at
mm,
the aspect of storage. If it's a maintenance, you can look at that.
yeah,
And indeed, that's a good point, Rob, to use these tools also for, of course, for training, and to
yeah,
update your training.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
very
that's
good.
another thing. If there are nice examples in it of things that are not okay and some best practices, it's
Yeah,
really good to include that in your own training materials.
yeah, just definitely. So this is the news. There will be the conference. It's in April of GFSI. We will talk about it
Yeah, when we get there.
when the spring comes,
Yeah,
the longer waited spring.
yeah,
Okay. So we talked about conference update. So you tell
yeah.
us a bit about your experience at the Fruit Logistica. I
Yes.
saw from someone there was a wall full of vegetables and fruits.
Oh,
I think I
yes.
said, but they were giving away, because my concern was, is it thrown after the conference?
No, it is not. No, after the conference, what happens? So Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, the conference is closed, and then there's a lot of people, actually volunteers, coming in from the food bank
Okay.
in Berlin, and they take all the food, so that which is still good, and that will go to families, deprived families in the wider area of Berlin.
Yeah, great.
And of course, there's huge amounts of fruits. Indeed, there's about 2,500 exhibitors. Yes, there are, and it ranges from equipment, so harvesting equipment to processing equipment. I still think like 2,000 of the 2,500 are really food importers, exporters, producers. Yeah, not producers, because it's all fruit and vegetables, fresh. So they're usually then either farm-based companies that bring their products there and try to negotiate good deals.
Mhm. And
It's-
what
it,
are,
it,
what are you doing there? Rob, tell us.
Actually, I'm the co-founder of another company called Flavor Shield,
Mhm.
and that's we are introducing a new technology on the market, which is based on a very mild treatment with ozone,
Mhm.
which helps lengthen the shelf life of fresh fruit and vegetables, somewhere between 30 to up to 100% even. And that can be significant these days, because we see, for instance, with the issues in the Red Sea, that a lot of ships now have to go around the south of Africa to Europe, so there are longer transit times, and if shelf life obviously can be an issue then. And if you have a technology that, actually without using chemicals, you might say ozone is a chemical. No, it's a natural gas, and actually it reacts with bacteria on the one hand, so the micro load is lowered. And the other nice thing it does is that it temporarily blocks ethylene receptors, and then the ripening process is halted. So the fruit and vegetables also stay fresh, and that's a big thing.
So you had a booth there?
Yes, we had a booth there, and it was really good. I also walked the show to see all the companies that are there. Yeah, it's really, really big. Literally, companies from all continents were present.
Wow. Are there also conferences, or is this more of a
No, they do something similar to, for instance, what Food Ingredient Europe does. So there's in you might say trade show conferences. So usually they dedicate a specific area to this. In the first 2 days of the trade show, they had what they call the technology hub. So there were a lot of technical innovations that were presented to the audience, and of course most of them were also exhibitors. And the last day there was a startup. They changed it to a startup hub, and there were really innovative startups and companies. I've come across a company that has created a sticker that you could just put onto a pallet, but it reads the temperature when it is being so not continuously, but it can read the temperature when it's being read, and you can read it with either RFID or with an NFC. So basically, with your cell phone, you can just go blip, and it will read the temperature and the location and communicate that to a central server. So there's some really innovative stuff happening also in the packaging area that was on that show. So really interesting one. It's the largest fresh fruit and vegetable show globally already for years.
Okay, in Germany, right?
In Germany, in Berlin.
It's always in Berlin, or does it change?
It's always in Berlin. No, they don't change venue. It's always in February in Berlin. Yeah.
Okay, so a place to be in February in Berlin is the Fruit Logistica. And I think it's important also of course for us as a consultants, it's always interesting because you can have a networking and exchange with people. In your case,
and see new trends in industry. I always do both. Even if I'm an exhibitor, I always want to see the show and see what is new. So there's
And I think it's also good for the food safety professionals to go out of the factory and go to conferences, go to this kind of exhibitions, because that's where you can learn a lot, I think. Also
because some people in the food industry, of course, they're using fresh fruit and vegetables. If you're making sandwiches, then fresh fruit and vegetables are a part of your ingredients. And actually trying to understand what is happening, what are the latest inventions or the latest changes that some companies do can help you potentially upgrade your quality, have less food waste, have better quality of product, and fewer food safety risks. So I think it's always worthwhile to also visit some of the relevant trade shows for the ingredients that you use and or the products that you produce. Because that way, also even as a food safety person, you can still learn a lot by just going there.
Okay, no, I will have it in my agenda. I will have it in forward. Is it every year?
Or every year, yeah. No, every year.
February 2025, I will be there.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this one is everywhere you go, you can get free fruits. So you don't need to buy sandwiches. You can just eat all day. It's really good.
That's a good one. A good aspect. Well, we come to the end, and
yeah,
the free resource of the month.
Yes,
and we propose the IFST Food Safety Knowledge Hub. This is a great site. You have a shortcut over there, bit.ly FSK Hub. And it's really great. I think I look at it from time to time because it's really a lot of material which are curated, of training materials, guidelines, different websites, and they are organized in different categories, like for small company, for bigger companies, for educators, So if you are a trainer, and also for consumers, there are even the guidelines, and it's really a great tool. They have another one. I don't know if you know it, Rob, about sustainability too. They have done the same for sustainability.
Yeah.
And so if you want to learn and free on a free basis, because there are some materials that
Always good.
where you have to register, and there are some, but yeah, most of the stuff they share is free. So there's some really a link to have in your link directory.
Yeah, at the very top, I would say.
Yeah, at the very top, and to look at it once in a month,
Yeah,
or even to have notification when they change something. It's really the
it's
institute.
very worthwhile. I fully agree.
I think the IFST, they also have a very huge conference, right? Or am I
Yeah, they do.
mistaken?
Yeah, no, they do. Yeah,
It's have you
mainly in
been
the
there?
US.
In the
No,
US?
not yet. Yeah.
Something
But it's
to...
certainly again worth your while to go there. So the IEFP, the International Association for Food Protection, and IFST are two conferences that I think are certainly really interesting. At least once every 10 years, at a minimum, to take one of those. Yeah.
No, it's great. Okay, then well, it's the end of our 2024 seminar. So thank you. I don't know if you have questions in the audience. You can also, of course, reach out to us. You have the link, tree contacts of Rob, and my link tree contact as well. So you have all the details of the activities that we have and how to contact us. And please feel free if you have any question.
Yeah.
We will come back to you with a date. We'll send to the people who have registered, and for next month.
Yes, that will be pretty soon.
So all the best in this week, Rob, and
same to you, and same to all the attendants.
And see you very, very soon.
Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.